First priority, wow, there's so much you've got to do. So it's about getting a strategic plan where everything works together. And the number one thing is making sure that the money's leaking out of our region stays within our region. So it's about getting all of these, it's like raising all the sides of a barn at the same time. So it's getting the money in from central government, from those things we can, but making sure that the anchor institutions are working together, that we set up the People's Bank, that we start managing our land and knowing what our land management plan is, and that audit on the adult education to make sure the whole thing ties together. So I'm sorry, I hate politicians that don't give a straight answer, but you can't just start with one thing, we've got to do everything.
My first priority as Mayor would be to go and bang on doors in Whitehall and Westminster and demand more funding for our region. The North East has been the most hard hit of any region in England from cuts, and it's time we stood up to this Tory government and said that enough is enough. So as Mayor, my first task would be to speak up for our public services and go and bang on ministers' doors and demand the fair funding settlement that our region so badly needs and deserves. It's really important that we beat the Tories in this election. I'll put together a winning coalition. I've got the experience of how to win elections against the Tories and Lib Dems over decades of my time in Newcastle. So I'll put together a winning team. I'll make sure I've got an attractive manifesto which plays to all parts of the electorate, and I'll be out there knocking on doors like I have every weekend for the last 20 years in Newcastle. There's no substitute to talking to the electorate, and the people that are voting in this election will want to know that it's a mayor who cares about them and knows their area. So to take on the Tories, I'll put together a winning team, have the right proposals and right policies, and also get out and talk to voters and make sure that this election is won for Labour.
To beat the Tories, we need clear manifesto commitments, because people vote for policies. If we turn up saying, I care more and things are bad, well, you know what, the Tories do that as well. Theresa May told us austerity's over. Does anybody believe that kind of politics? No. So, clear policies that will make a difference to people's lives. Community wealth building, People's Bank, adult education that is actually out in the communities, community hubs for those rural areas, and working with the transport system so that it works better for people, and we have things like joint ticketing, and a whole range of environmental policies like tackling food waste that are going to make a difference and capture the public imagination. Because all the people who aren't voting, we need them to vote for us, and they won't vote for someone who's standing there just waving the flag for status quo politics. I've worked in business and I've worked in industry and I've worked in Northumberland in factories, and I spent a lot of my career actually doing exactly this. I was the person who was on those flights going over to Europe to integrate and get manufacturing brought to the North East. So I've got that hands-on experience. And I can tell you, people don't come because you're the mate or because you took them out for a drink. They come because you have some real practical solutions to whatever it is they want. Now, these decisions are usually made on a whole variety of reasons. So it may be, for example, that the operations director wants to know, will there be an 11 kilo electron volt wire into the factory or a 33 kilo electron volt into the factory? Because that's the sort of thing that makes a difference. The transport, the training. And it's by finding out and understanding these details, and it's the details that matter. And that's why someone who's actually done this job for a living will make a difference. That's how we bring industry and inward investment into our region.
We'll get good quality jobs for our area when we encourage existing businesses to grow, get more businesses coming into our region, and make sure that the employment terms and conditions that people offer are good and don't exploit people. That's why I've campaigned and introduced in Newcastle City Council a living wage. That's why I've campaigned against exploitative 0 hours contracts. And that's why I've backed the TUC Great Jobs agenda, which I think is a great framework for providing good quality employment and having good representation in the workplace. So I'll work with businesses using the authority of the position of mayor, yes, to help them to grow, but to get them to also understand that their responsibility as they grow and get public sector help to do so is to put something back by making sure they have good quality terms and conditions for their staff, and also put something back into the community so that we all can benefit from inclusive growth. Like many Labour Party members, I voted Remain in the referendum, and the complete mess that the Tories are making of Brexit fills me with a deep sense of unease about what the future is for our country. The Mayor can't solve the problems of Brexit overnight, but the role of the Mayor will be really important in the months and years ahead as we look towards real economic uncertainty. The Mayor can help to bring investment here, help send a message of confidence about what a great place this is to live and work and set up a business. And the Mayor will also have to spend a lot of time working with government to make sure that what replaces the EU funding we've had in this region, substantial EU funding we've had in this region, with the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, because it's absolutely essential that we get our fair share of that prosperity fund when it's set up. So the role of the Mayor is not to rerun the referendum, but to make sure that we have somebody in this region speaking up for business, speaking up for our communities, and getting the best deal out of government from whatever funding there is to come post-Brexit.
Brexit is a mess from start to finish because David Cameron had rank irresponsibility in having a manifesto where, yes, you can remain, or something else, not entirely sure, and don't even know if we can deliver it. What sort of Brexit we get will determine what sort of response we need. If we have a no-deal Brexit, then we're going to have problems because our region is a net exporter in manufactures. We need a customs union. That's my position on it. Ideally, I wanted us to win the referendum. We didn't. We have to deal with the situation we're in. But in terms of mitigation, it's about making sure we control those things that are in our region. That's why policies like community wealth building, having our own community and energy company, and having our own People's Bank, they're the things that actually give us a fighting chance of weathering what is going to be a national and probably a global economic storm. The schools challenge is a really big part of what this deal has to deliver. Now, at the moment, it's doing things working with only those with academies and foundation schools, but this has to go across all schools, including those that are still in local authority control. Now, young people at schools, but also those who are leaving school or have left school, and making sure that adult education is there for those who want actually a direct route into employment, but also good education includes things like environmental awareness. So I'll target some of the adult education into making sure that people can get on board with that behavioural change, because that's the future that our young people are going to have to deal with. And people of my generation, well, we're not going to see the sort of problems they are. So working with schools to make sure that they're funded properly. Can we really do the damage the Tories have done in terms of teacher cuts? No, but what we can do is match kids' opportunities to what's available and get the whole thing running in a holistic way.
I think that the introduction of the comprehensive school system by the Attlee government was one of the greatest achievements of that time. The idea that anybody, regardless of their background, regardless of the circumstances of their birth, can go to a good quality school and achieve their potential is, I think, the foundation, the bedrock of a socialist society. But I'm concerned that our schools, some of our schools, aren't always performing well. So I would lead an education challenge to drive up the quality of our schools, ensuring we've got the best leadership in place, supporting our governors, supporting our heads, supporting our teachers. Because the children that are going through the school system today deserve nothing but the best. And it really angers me when we see investment going into schools in other parts of the country, but we don't see that investment here. So as Mayor, I'll fight to improve educational standards so that every young person going through the education system gets the very best education that our country has to offer. Currently, Our buses are deregulated. That's one of the legacies of Thatcher from the 1980s, which means that private bus operators get to compete with each other and the travelling public get a really poor deal as a result. We have some of the most expensive buses here in the northeast of anywhere in the country. A few years ago, I led the plan to try to re-regulate our buses, using the former combined authority as a vehicle for doing it. Ultimately, that wasn't successful because the law says that we had to compensate the bus operators for loss of future profit, which is ridiculous. So I would want to work to change the law with a Labour government to make sure that in areas like ours, we have bus services which serve people, not profit. And in the interim, that means working particularly to support our rural areas. My mum set up a community transport scheme in nearby County Durham. And that's the kind of thing that, while we're waiting for a Labour government to change the law in our favour, we can roll up our sleeves and get on to deliver, because we can't wait for good quality bus services.
Unfortunately, this devolution deal doesn't give us bus franchising powers. I wish it did, but it doesn't. So we have to work with the 3 authorities north of the Tyne, led by the Mayor, with the 4 authorities south of the Tyne, Sunderland, South Tyneside, Gateshead and Durham. Because transport, of course, is about moving from place to place, so other places, we need to work together on that. And they're good Labour authorities, and they will work together with us on those things. So the buses in Northumberland, for example, are unbelievably bad. I've heard so many anecdotes about buses racing each other across to try and be the first one to pick up the passengers. Now, a joint ticketing system will make a difference. This works in other cities, and you just tap in with your Oyster card or your debit card, and it automatically calculates the best fare for you, divides it amongst the suppliers, and that is something that actually makes moving around on the buses easier. But frankly, we need a Labour government or the Tory government to change the powers so that we can set up our own bus companies, which is what we need. Experience comes in so many forms. It's about understanding people and it's about your values, because the Mayor's role is a political role. I'm a socialist and have long and proudly said so. So it's about making sure that experience informs your business experience. Now, I've started and run a business. I've managed massive projects integrating companies. So I have that first-hand experience of doing it. And businesses have to be profitable, but they have to be responsible. So a lot of the business role is about improving corporate social responsibility and not a race to the bottom. We can all know the employers who are searching people on their way in and out from work, making people put their hands up for toilet breaks. You know what? Not every business is a good business, but many are. And it's about improving the possibilities for cooperative businesses. So, using the adult education to give people training in these sorts of business and environmental business, and really get working on that green jobs agenda, the 1 million climate change jobs.
The role of the Mayor is an embedded position. It's not an executive role like the Mayor of North Tyneside Council, for example, or even the Mayor of London. The Mayor will be successful if he or she has good relationships with our local authorities. And I've built up really strong relationships with all 3 of our local authorities, all 3 of our Labour groups in our area, as well as trade unions and the wider business community that is important in order for the Mayor to succeed. The success of the Mayor will come from the strength of the relationships that they're able to deliver. And I've got a really good track record of delivering for people in Newcastle. And I want to use that experience across a wider area to cover North Tyneside and Northumberland as well. And use my 20 years of experience as a councillor, my 8 years of experience as council leader, to bring more and better jobs to our wider region. My main priority for housing as Mayor would be to get us building council houses again. You know, it's absolutely criminal that about 1/3 of the council houses that were sold in the 1980s are now back in the private rented sector, being rented out at market rents. And part of the devolution deal is about accelerating housing numbers. We won't see those housing numbers delivered by the private sector because they've got no more capacity to do that. The game changer will be when we get councils building again. I want us to commit to a massive council house building programme. But we also need the government to change the law, because there's no point building council houses if they're then subject to the right to buy and sold out from under our feet just as soon as we've handed over the front door keys. So I would have a twin track approach, accelerating the rate of growth of council housing so that we can be proud again that councils can offer support and shelter to people who need it, but also campaigning to change the law so we keep those council houses in our communities forever.
Housing is so essential to everything. It affects health, it affects wealth, it affects the environment. So the houses we need to build need to be eco-friendly. And a lot of that includes carbon sequestration, where the construction methods are locking carbon away inside the timbers and inside the insulation inside these houses. And we can do this on a community-owned basis. So community land trusts, where the land is owned collectively by the people who live there, but they get the chance to buy their own homes. And if there's a people's bank, they can get their mortgages through that, and the money stays in our region. It's a win-win. And with a managed community cooperative, then the people have the fair rents, all of the benefits of social housing, but they cannot be privatised. They're exempt from right to buy legislation. This is something that we can do now, and it makes a difference. Tourism's a big industry. We've got to be careful because it's not a year-round industry. We need other jobs there. So it's about making sure that we've got people who know we're here. So the advertising is a huge part of it. But that it's not people coming just to look at castles. We have some fantastic landscapes, but there's got to be other things there. So it's about the small businesses that are going to benefit from that and their ideas and the local community's knowledge in these things. So, you know what? Most people, when they go on holiday, one of the things they're looking for is what's the quality of the accommodation? Is the food going to be any good? These are all things that need to be holistic. So that requires an actual board to look at it. And if anybody tells you that they know what everybody wants when they come on holiday, no, they don't. It's about working with the people in that industry and setting up all those small industries and small suppliers and caterers and hoteliers that are going to benefit from it.
We've got some absolutely fantastic tourism assets here in the north of Tyne area. Everything from the city centre of Newcastle, the castle itself, throughout to our beautiful coast, our countryside, and of course Hadrian's Wall. And the time is right, I think, to really promote this as a tourism destination. One of the problems at the moment is that the agencies and organisations don't really work together. So I would create a new structure, bringing them all together, promoting our area as a great place to visit, and use that to develop an online presence so that people can come here for a weekend, a week, or even longer if they want to. We've got some fantastic landscape and scenery, and I think it's about time we show that off to the rest of the world. We're proud about what we've got and showed it off with immense pride. And that's one of the ways that we'll not only get people visiting here, but will boost the tourism economy and help create jobs as a result. One of the problems of the North of Tyne name is it doesn't really fully represent the diversity of the areas that are covered by the devolution area. There's the urban core in Newcastle, there's our coastal areas, there are many towns and villages, and then there's rural Northumberland. And as Mayor, I would see it as my responsibility to represent all of the communities who live in all of those different parts of our area. That means a Mayor who gets out and about, who talks to people, who goes out and visits places, not just sitting in an office, wherever that office is. And I want to be the Mayor that gets out and speaks to people, meets people, is part of these many different communities. So I'm expecting, if I'm the Labour candidate and then the elected as Mayor, that I'll be spending a lot of time up and down the rail network and up and down our roads. But I think it's only right that to represent people, you get to know them. And that's what I would spend my time doing if I were lucky enough to be selected as the Labour candidate.
Regional identities are such a powerful part of people's identity. And the problems that you've got in somewhere like North Northumberland are so different. I was up there recently, I was talking to a young woman working in a bar, and I was saying, well, what do you do? And she's at sixth form, and it takes her an hour to get from Sea Houses to the college in Alnwick. And I said, what do you want to do when you've done that? She says, well, I want to study childcare. I want to go to Newcastle College. But it's a 7-hour round trip by bus. So the community hubs, getting things that are working in these places, any places, it doesn't matter where, urban areas, rural areas, where old buildings have public services in them, so there's then the money for a caretaker, so then the community groups start to work, and so then you put high-speed broadband in, and they're incubator units for small businesses. People should not need to travel to the centre of Newcastle to get their education. We can distribute these things. It makes a difference.